All right, good evening, everybody. It's so good to be with you all again. So glad to have another opportunity to share God's Word with you all here on YouTube. And looking forward, especially right now, to seeing you all in person again this Sunday, as we'll be having a church outside here on the property at 10:30 this Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you guys at least through your car. And looking forward to soon, hopefully, being able to get back together as a youth group in person. Be sure that you are following us on Instagram and Facebook and wherever else so that you'll know what that's going to look like and when it's going to happen, because I'm hoping that we'll be together very soon in person. Just a couple things I want to remind you about, though, before I get into the message. If you are graduating this year, please let us know. In particular, we sent out an email to everybody asking for some particular information about our graduates. And I haven't gotten all that yet, and it's coming up soon. In fact, we're going to do graduate recognition on June 7th. So please respond with that information as soon as possible. We'll send out a follow-up email with all the details on that again, but you should already have gotten it, so just go back and look for it and be sure that you send me that information. Second of all, camp signups are going to be due in a week. As you know, we moved camp's date. We're now going the first week of August. That's August 3rd through the 7th. You need to sign up by next Wednesday. If you have not done that, please do that soon. So just a reminder about those two things. So I want to jump in tonight. We're still talking about sin. We're still talking about the fall in our roots study. Today's question is, what is sin? The answer to that is that sin is the corruption of our nature so that we do evil instead of good. It corrupts us so that we do not love God or obey God. I think the word corruption is a good word to use for sin. Sometimes on my computer I've gotten this error that'll tell me that a file or a program has become corrupted. Now, I don't know enough about computers to know exactly what causes that or what happens. I mean, I can look at my computer and it's all in one piece. It looks fine. All the parts are there. Everything's working like it's supposed to be working. All the other programs run, but for whatever reason, even though the hardware is fine, something has gone wrong in my computer's memory. The O's and the ones that you always see written down, those have been messed up somehow, and now that particular file has been corrupted to the point that it can no longer work. So I have all the parts here, but it's been corrupted in some way so that it no longer functions the way that it's supposed to function. One of the fundamental truths of Genesis 1 and 2 is that creation is good, including us. However, we have been corrupted in a serious way. And so if you look at us, we look the same, just like God made us. We still got 2 arms and 2 legs. Our minds still work somewhat well. People are capable of doing great things and showing incredible acts of bravery and kindness. But we also know that people will do incredibly evil things as well. In fact, we all suffer this tendency to do the wrong thing rather than the right thing. In a sense, our system, who we are, our nature is corrupted. Something about us is broken. And we see this first in Scripture when Adam and Eve sin against God. Rather than listen to God, they decide to take matters into their own hands and play God themselves. And so as a result of that, they are cursed and now experience hostility with the earth. They experience hostility between each other. And ultimately, they experience hostility with God. And it is incredible in the Bible how quickly this problem spreads and just spirals out of control. In fact, in the very next chapter, if you move to Genesis chapter 4, you get the story of Cain and Abel, the world's first murder. These were the children of Adam and Eve. Cain is the older one, and he's a farmer. He grows crops. Abel is the younger one. He's a shepherd. He raises sheep. And it says in Genesis chapter 4, verse 3, in the course of time, Cain presented some of the land's produce as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also presented an offering, some of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but he did not have regard for Cain and his offering. Cain was furious and he looked despondent. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you furious and why do you look despondent? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." Here in the story, we're told that God is pleased with the offering that Abel makes, but not with the one that Cain made. And we're not told why that is, which can make us think that, well, maybe God is just playing favorites here, and that doesn't really seem right, but that's not the case. When God goes and he speaks with Cain, he tells him, if you do what is right, won't you be accepted? That's implying that Cain knows what to do. Cain knows how to do the right thing. Cain knows how to fix the problem. And it's God's desire that he does that. It's God's desire that Cain does the right thing next time. Cain has the opportunity here to make things right. But see, the problem is not just, the reason that God's talking to Cain is not just that he didn't offer the right sacrifice or something like that. There's something dark going on inside of Cain as well. He has this hatred and this jealousy towards his brother as a result of this. Now, if you think about that, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because Abel didn't do anything to Cain. Abel didn't take Cain's stuff. Abel's success didn't hurt Cain in any way. It wasn't some kind of competition or anything like that. All that happened was that Abel did the right thing and found God's favor, and Cain did not. Yet even though Abel didn't do anything to Cain, Cain is furious at Abel. And he's so mad, it's almost like he's mad that Abel succeeded. And that's his problem, is that Abel succeeded. And it may make us uncomfortable to think about, but in reality, we can be the exact same way. Maybe it's at school or with somebody in your family, but we all probably have somebody in our life who's doing really well. And even though they haven't wronged us or they haven't cheated us in any way, we can't stand them because they are doing well. We feel as if they ought not have everything that they have, or that we ought to have the same things that they have, that they don't really deserve what they have, but we do, and we don't have it. And so we get jealous, and jealousy is so tough to control, and before long it just turns into anger, if not just outright hatred for somebody that didn't even do anything to you. I remember when I played football, I would get so jealous of other guys on my team because I came in being extremely unathletic when I started out. I wasn't fast. I wasn't strong, I wasn't coordinated, I wasn't any of that stuff. But I worked really, really hard trying to be those things. And meanwhile, there's these other guys on the team, and they never went to workouts. They never put in the effort that I put into it, but they could just set foot on the field and start because they were just really, really, really athletic. And that made me mad because I feel like they didn't deserve the talent that they had. I felt like I deserved to be better than they were because I was willing to work. I was willing to put in the hours. I was willing to go to the workouts. And yet they're coming in there and they're getting more playing time than me, and they don't work nearly as hard. That made me jealous. And it wasn't like they cheated me in some way. It wasn't like they hurt me in any way or anything like that. I was just mad that they were talented and that I wasn't. Now, where did these feelings come from? Because if you think about it, it really doesn't make sense that we feel that way. Why would I have been mad at somebody for being good at football? It's not like they stopped me from being good at football, but yet I still felt mad about it. Why do I experience that? Why do I feel that way? Well, the reason that we feel that way is because we are born sinners. Our nature is corrupted, and instead of loving God and doing good, we resist God and we do evil instead. On Monday in my devotion, I noticed something in this passage that I'd not noticed ever before. In verse 7, it says, "But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." Now, that last phrase sounded familiar to me, and it turns out that's because it is familiar to me. Because that same phrase comes in Genesis chapter 3. When God announces the consequences of sin for Eve, he tells her, your desire will be for your husband, yet he will rule over you. You have that same desire and ruling idea. And those are very, very similar phrases, same words, same everything. And so God, what that means for us is that when God was talking to Eve, God had intended that her relationship with Adam, and her relationship with all people in general to come, he wanted that to be perfectly harmonious. He wanted that to be perfectly loving. But now, because of sin, there's going to be a struggle introduced. The two are going to be at odds with each other. They're going to be trying to rule over and trying to control each other. Ironically, God had actually granted the authority to Adam and Eve to rule over the earth, to to control the earth and its creatures. They're supposed to lead and take care of the earth like he would. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they were created to do. But instead of ruling the animals, they listen to one of the animals, and they wind up being ruled by it, being ruled by sin, and wind up trying to rule and control each other instead. Everything gets turned around and messed up in horrible, horrible ways. Now think about that and bring that to bear on what we just read about Cain. Cain is being tempted by sin. Sin's desire is to control and to rule over and to ultimately destroy Cain, just like it does for all of us. But God says that Cain must rule over sin. Cain's responsibility then is to deal with himself. It is for him to right his wrongs, to fix his mistakes, to do the right thing. He must resist temptation in the process. But once again, just like Adam and Eve, instead of ruling the thing that he was supposed to rule over, he wound up being ruled by it. And instead of getting himself under control, he decided he'd try to control his brother instead, specifically to make sure that his brother never outdid him again. In verse 8 it says, Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's guardian?" Now, I've got siblings, and if you've got brothers and sisters, you know where I'm coming from. You get mad at them sometimes. I fought with them, and I fought hard with them. But I cannot imagine wanting to kill one of my brothers or sisters. I can't imagine that. If somebody would kill their own family, that person is in a dark, dark place. But not only does Cain murder his own brother, when God confronts him about it, he gives the most just callous lie that he could give. God asks him where Abel is, and Cain lies to God's face and adds, "Well, am I my brother's guardian?" As if to say, well, why are you asking me? It's not my job to keep up with my brother. At this point, Cain has just spiraled out of control. Not only has he murdered his brother, he doesn't even feel bad about it. And the rest is history from there. We know that just like with Cain, sin spread through all of humanity like wildfire, even among God's own people who were supposed to be different. God said in Hosea 4, verses 1 and 2, it says, "There is no truth, there is no faithful love, and no knowledge of God in the land. Cursing, lying, murder, stealing, and adultery are rampant, and one act of bloodshed follows another." They were spiraling into worse and worse and worse sin. We as people have that tendency. We go from one bad thing to an even worse thing. And oftentimes we think we can control our sin, but in reality it is sin that controls us. Even if we want to do good, we still struggle and fail to do the good thing that we even want to do. That's why Paul says in Romans 7 verses 14 and 15, he says, "For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold as a slave under sin. For I do not understand what I'm doing, because I do not practice what I want to do, but I do what I hate." In verses 19 through 24, he says, "For I do not do the good that I want to do, but I practice the evil that I don't want to do. Now, if I do what I do not want, I'm no longer the one that does it, but it's sin that lives in me. Now, I discovered this law: when I want to do what is good, evil is present with me. For in my inner self, I delight in God's law. But I see a different law in the parts of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and taking me prisoner to the law of sin in the parts of my body. What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body of death?" You cannot be saved until you've been at that point where you realize that you could not handle your own sin. You are not in control. You are, as Paul said, a slave sold under sin. And you need someone else to rescue you. But it is after that point that Paul says, thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. And he says, therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. In Jesus, we can be forgiven of our sin, and we can be set free of its control over our lives. How can that happen? Not like Cain. Cain tried to hide his sin from God. Cain didn't wise up until the consequences came. Instead, it happens like it says in Psalm 32, verses 1 through 5. It says, how joyful is the one whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. How joyful is the person whom the Lord does not charge with iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones became brittle from groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me, and my strength was drained as in the summer's heat. Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not conceal my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. And you forgave the guilt of my sin. Redemption comes through confession. Acting as though you don't have a problem, as if you haven't done anything wrong, as if you can handle it yourself, or that you can be good enough on your own, will only make matters worse, and is actually a show of an arrogant attitude towards God that says, God, I don't need you, or God, I don't trust you. But if we come to God in humility and acknowledge that we cannot make it on our own, that we cannot fix things, that we cannot control ourselves and get our sin under control, if we come to Him and acknowledge that and confess that to Him, then He will set us free. And how joyful is the one whose transgression is forgiven. You know, confession works a lot like going to the doctor. When I was in high school, I was lifting weights and I messed up some muscles in my back. And I was worried because I was trying to get stronger for football because I didn't play much my first year, as I just said a little while ago. Because I didn't get to play much, I was working really hard because I feared that if I went to all the workouts and worked really hard, that I'd get more playing time the next season. That's what I was trying to do. So I didn't want to miss any workouts. I was super dedicated, working super hard, trying to get better. And when I hurt myself, I knew that I'd done something. I felt something pop, and I literally fell to the ground. And luckily there was something to catch the bar behind me, because otherwise the bar would have fallen on top of me as well. I literally couldn't have stayed upright when that happened. But I was scared of being hurt, because I didn't want to lose time in the weight room, because I didn't want to lose playing time next year. And so instead of stopping, I said, well, I'm going to try to work through this. And so I was just going to keep going. I was going to keep trying to work out. But the more that I tried, the worse that things hurt. And I didn't make it but maybe a day or two before I couldn't hardly move. My back was hurting me so badly. It literally hurt to lay down. I would be trying to fall asleep at night, and my back would just be hurting me. It was just horrible pain. It felt like there was a knife sticking right out my back there. And so because I couldn't do anything, eventually I had to go see a doctor, and I had to tell them everything that had happened, and just let them tell me what I was going to do. And it wasn't a pleasant experience for me, because just like I was afraid of, they told me I had to stop working out. I had to take a break. I had to take some time off. But even more than just taking time off, I was going to have to do some rehab. I was going to have to do some stretches with our trainer and do these different things to try to get everything moving again once it had a chance to heal. And that was so painful. I can remember the first few times I did it, literally lying on the floor in tears while my trainer was stretching out my hamstring. It was such a painful experience for me. But you know what? That was the only thing that made me better. If I'd kept trying to do things my own way, if I kept trying to push through the pain, I would have really messed up some things in my back, like serious, permanent things. I was just making things worse on my own. At a certain point, I had to just suck it up, deal with the consequences, and go and see a doctor and listen to them so that I could get better. Well, in the same way, many of us, we don't go to God with our sin because we know that it's going to be painful when He deals with it. And so when He deals with the sin in our life, we know that it's going to hurt, because that means that there's going to be things that we like that get taken away. And on the flip side of that, we're going to have to do things that we don't like, that we don't want to do. It's not going to be an easy process. but it will make you better. And so the choice is yours when it comes to your sin. You can either surrender to God, you can let Him deal with your sin, or you can keep making things worse doing it your own way. The choices are that you can either be ruled by God or you can be ruled by sin. One leads to life and another to death. And so I'm pleading with you today, students, humble yourselves and choose wisely. Choose life. Embrace the pain that's going to come with dealing with your sin, because it will make you well on the other end. Come clean with God and let Him deal with your sin. Guys, thank you so much for watching tonight. I sure do miss you guys, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.